Hey there, my name is Alex. I'm an English major at Indiana University, and I'm very bored right now. So I decided to do a book review and offer my thoughts on a book I just finished reading called Suttree by Cormac McCarthy. Very famous author, very famous book, and apparently his fourth that he ever wrote, and as far as I know, his longest. It's about 471 pages, so it's a bit of a journey to get through. He wrote this book in 1979, approximately 45 years ago now, and it's very loosely based on Cormac McCarthy's life. You can see it in the way that Cornelius Suttree forsook his family name, his social status, in order to live in poverty alongside the outcast of society in Knoxville, Tennessee. Cormac reportedly did something similar. He gave up a lot of his social status and wealth to become a writer and lived amongst the common rabble like us. As far as the prose goes, I'd like to read a passage from the very beginning so you can get an idea of what McCarthy's writing style is like. Dear friend, now in the dusty clockless hours of the town, when the streets lie black and steaming in the wake of the water trucks, and now when the drunk and the homeless have washed up in the lee of walls and alleys or abandoned lots, and cats go forth high-shouldered and lean in the grim perimeters about. Now in these soot-black brick or cobbled corridors where light-wire shadows make a gothic harp of cellar doors, no soul shall walk save you. Old stone walls unplumbed by weathers, lodged in their striae fossil bones, limestone scarabs rucked in the floor of this once inland sea. Thin dark trees through yon iron palings where the dead keep their own small metropolis. Curious marble architecture, stelae and obelisk and cross and little rain-worn stones where names grow dim with years. So as you can see, very dramatic. Even describing some of the most mundane stuff, McCarthy likes to go on little tangents about the primordial or like the beginnings of life on Earth or something along those lines. Even gets apocalyptic a few times. With words like lodged in their striae fossil bones or this once inland sea. In terms of plot, this book is aimless, to say the least. There's not really much overarching. There's not one core event that changes everything. It's just the life of a man over several years as he lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, in a little boat on the Tennessee River. That's not to say there isn't movement, that there isn't some sort of plot, but this is more of a character study than it is detailing an event. By the end, you can see that a lot of the characters have changed significantly, and it's very enjoyable to watch them figure things out, figure themselves out, how they're going to move on from various events, especially Suttree. From this point on, I'm going to offer some of my personal thoughts, and there will be spoilers. And I'm going to be discussing the ending quite a bit. I would like to point out something that was written on the back of this particular copy, stating that Suttree rises above the physical and human squalor with detachment, humor, and dignity. I disagree with that. I do not believe he rises above it especially not with dignity. I think that in many ways he is the most flawed person in the novel. He abandons his wife and child at the onset before we even get to know him. He just wanders through the forest at one point, raving mad and absolutely insane. At another point, he gets typhoid fever and bleeds out his ass. Admittedly, that is not his fault, but bleeding out your ass is not something I would call especially dignified or rising above the squalor. There is a point where he essentially becomes a trophy boyfriend to a prostitute, and she just lavishes him with gifts to keep him around. And it's funny to watch. But again, I don't believe he's rising above the squalor by doing stuff like that. There are characters who I think do rise above, though, especially the side characters. who Suttree interacts with fairly often. Some of his closest friends, Gene Harrogate, especially, by far the most interesting character in this novel, if you ask me. You get introduced to him as he's having sex with watermelons. Keep an open mind. He does turn out to be one of the most ambitious characters in the novel. He is very intelligent. He shows a lot of initiative, a lot of ingenuity in the ways that he tries to rise above his position, the ways that he tries to prove himself worthy of the upper echelons of society. Some of his schemes are they are the highlight of the book as far as I'm concerned. They are the moments where the humor in this shines the most, but they also show a more optimistic worldview, and I think that's representative of Harrogate's worldview rather than Suttree's, which is a little more aimless, like the plot. There's also Ab Jones, who ultimately dies by the end because he's beaten to death by police. However, I would like to say that, much like Harrogate, his ambition is something that he has Suttree beaten easily. He has such a hatred, such a passion for the police that he goes out fighting them when he didn't need to. And that shows humanity. That shows just life in general that Suttree is, I believe, incapable of in this book. So I don't believe that Suttree rises above these people. I think that in many ways they rise above him. I would also like to close read a specific segment that goes on about clocks and lycanthropy. So here's a paragraph. Along a wet street, a freshened wind with spits of rain in it, raw musky smell of the walks. He was in some kind of trouble. Clock shop. A four-legged clock and a glass bell, a pending treble hook, baited with gold balls revolving slowly, coming to rest. The clock hands too. He looked at his face in the glass. On the wall beyond other clocks are stopping. Me? The shop is closed. A thought to ask. He will not ask, however. Clocks need winding and people to wind them. Someone should be told. He stops at a clock shop, and when he looks in the window, directly opposite him is a broken clock. He asks, me? It's how he sees himself. He believes that he is broken. There is no one there to wind him up properly. Clocks need winding and people to wind them. Who is the person that would wind him? God or the universe? Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it's his parents. Maybe they failed him fundamentally. And there are other moments in the book where he goes off on his dad. So I believe that could very easily be an explanation for that. Also, when he talks about other clocks being equally broken, I mean, all these other dysfunctional characters in the book could easily be representative of that. The clock winder has simply been a little lax with his job lately. He hasn't been giving people the proper winding. And that's what leads to this squalor, this dysfunctional group of outcasts and pariahs. The moment of lycanthropy. Are you aware of the penalty fixed upon conviction of lycanthropy? Suttree moaned in the ice. It was never me, he called, who segued lithe as an eel from chancery to forest path, abroad by dark tarns in a deep wood where no sun shone and the reeds grew black and fish blind. So, the lycanthropy segment, very likely indicative of the way he moves from his family's upper social position to something more base, something more disgusting, but also more fundamentally in tune with the natural world, so more in tune with the people around him. So he is being described as a lycanthrope, a werewolf, for deciding to abandon his family and live in poverty, which is a horrible transformation. However, it seems here that it's also a way to return to the world, a way to return to what is real and what is important. And I believe that that is what is being referred to with lycanthropy. I both of these scenes that I just mentioned with the clocks and the lycanthropy, they occur when Suttree is having a fever dream of sorts because of the typhoid fever where he bleeds out his ass. And a lot of his the moments where he has his epiphanies come from moments where he's stark raving insane. So do with that what you will. Maybe madness is what makes genius or something. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But I think it's very telling, especially that that's at the end of the book after we see him interact with all these characters, after it's been established what his family situation is like. It's a conclusion of sorts that lets us see where exactly he subconsciously perhaps has landed in terms of his values. Also, speaking of interesting characters, the very last one he interacts with before leaving is Trippin' Through the Dew is the name, which is a fascinating name. Not the real name, but apparently a nickname or a chosen name. And it's a very effeminate man, probably a gay man. And he has what seems like the most genuine and emotional connection with this man at the very end of the book, despite having rarely interacted with him and having had more of a connection to other characters who represent a more masculine personality type. Lord, honey, I thought you looked peaky. Let me see you. He turned Suttree toward the street lamp and peered into his eyes with genuine solicitude. And then later, the black reached out sadly, his face pinched. They stood there holding hands in the middle of the little street. When you coming back? I don't guess I'll be back. Don't tell me that. Well, sometime maybe. Take care. Tripping Through the Dew squeezed his hand and stepped back and gave a sort of crazy little salute. Best luck in the world, baby, he said. Thanks, John. You too. I think that is easily the most beautiful interaction between two humans that happens in this book. And the fact that it happens to such a minor character suggests to me that maybe Tripping Through the Dew could represent a lot more than just that specific character. It's reflective of Suttree's relationship with all of Knoxville, with Mick and Allie Flats, which is where he spends most of his time with these characters who are the underbelly of society. It's reflective of how he feels about the social outcasts around him. He is their brother. He shares the same soul. And I think that that is what Tripping Through the Dew represents. That it's an effeminate gay man that has that final interaction with him could potentially reflect how it's the effeminate side of man that allows something like that to happen. And it's something that we all need to be in touch with. It's something that allows for a true human interaction with somebody. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's very well written. I think that the prose is beautiful. I think that it will take multiple read-throughs in order to understand a lot of it. But I mean, that's a sign of a classic, I think. So I would highly recommend this to anyone, as long as you have patience and are willing to go through something with 471 pages. Well, if anyone watches this, I would love to hear other opinions. I would love to hear critiques of my opinions. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you.